The hum of the lights above is soft, almost like a lullaby, but not the comforting kind. It's the sound you hear when everything else has gone still, when the store has emptied out, and the world outside feels like a dream fading away. Imagine walking through a grocery store at 3 in the morning. Every aisle looks the same. The shelves are lined perfectly, each can and box in its place, but something feels wrong. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's the way your footsteps echo too loudly, like the building itself is listening. The narrator's voice is low and calm, almost soothing. There's a tone of nostalgia in it, like they've been here before years ago and still remember the smell of cheap coffee from the employee break room, the squeak of rubber soles on polished linoleum, the hum of the refrigerated section. Retail at night, they begin, has a rhythm of its own, the kind only those who've worked it can understand. Camera pans slowly through empty aisles, rows of cereal boxes glowing faintly under pale fluorescent lights. There's something cinematic about the stillness. The emptiness isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's the quiet that comes after everyone has gone home. The moment when you realize the store doesn't rest, it just waits. People think stores sleep. The narrator continues. They don't. They breathe. They creak. They whisper. The sound design is subtle. A gentle hum, a low thud from somewhere distant, maybe pipes expanding. But to someone alone in that space, every sound feels alive. The narrator talks about how working in retail late at night does something to you. It changes the way you see the world. You start to notice the way shadows move in the corners of aisles. You start to feel like the cameras are watching more than they should. And when the intercom crackles, when it hisses for just a second before going silent again, you tell yourself it's nothing. You have to, because if you don't, your mind starts filling in the blanks. We cut to a lone employee pushing a mop bucket down the frozen food aisle. His reflection warps in the glossy freezer doors as he passes. The narrator describes this moment with cinematic clarity, how the aisles stretch endlessly in both directions, like mirrors reflecting mirrors, a tunnel of repetition that never ends. The lights overhead buzz faintly. He pauses, looks down the next aisle, nothing there. But he could have sworn he heard someone whisper his name. Ever notice? The narrator says softly, how empty places seem louder when you're alone. The music is slow, atmospheric, distant piano keys, like echoes of a forgotten tune. There's a comfort to it, yet something undeniably unsettling underneath. The narrator explains that every retail worker, at some point, experiences something they can't quite explain. A shadow that moves against the light, a door that opens on its own, a face in the security mirror that's gone when you turn your head. Most of them shrug it off, they say. You have to, if you want to get through the night. The tone shifts gradually from reflective to eerie. The narrator's voice lowers, more intimate now, as if sharing a secret. But some things, they say, don't want to be shrugged off. Some things stay. A flicker, the lights dim for a second, the hum fades, and the sound of a shopping cart rolling by echoes in the distance. The camera turns the corner, there's no one there. Only an empty aisle and the faint vibration of the floor. The narrator describes the feeling, that moment when your body knows before your mind does. When your stomach tightens, when every hair on your neck stands up, and you realize something unseen is near. You tell yourself it's just the wind, just the air vents, just your imagination. But sometimes, a pause. Sometimes the air feels heavier, doesn't it? They go on, sharing the idea that stores, especially the ones that never close, hold energy. Stories. People come and go, hundreds, thousands over years. Every emotion, every memory, every late-night argument, every silent tear behind the counter. It all lingers. It doesn't fade when the lights go off. It soaks into the walls. The camera glides slowly past a row of checkout counters. A single register light blinks, lane 7. The screen flashes for a second, an image too quick to see clearly. Maybe a reflection, maybe a face. The narrator's tone tightens, just slightly. There's something about these places, they whisper. Something that remembers us. We hear the faint ring of an old cash register ding. Then silence. The atmosphere thickens. The air feels still, like the world is holding its breath. The narrator speaks again, almost gently. I've heard stories, real stories, from people who worked these shifts. People who thought they were alone until they realized they weren't. People who saw things they can't explain. The sound fades into a low hum again, building tension like a heartbeat. A light flickers. Somewhere far off, the faint sound of movement. Footsteps on tile, growing closer, then stopping. The narrator takes a breath. These stories, they say, aren't legends. They're not ghost tales told for fun. They happened to real people, in real stores, places you might have shopped in, places that still stand. The camera pans toward the automatic doors. They open slowly, but no one enters. A gust of air moves through, stirring papers near the counter. The narrator's tone now is darker, colder. These 7 stories were all sent in by people who thought their jobs were normal, until they weren't. A long pause. The music fades to silence. The only sound left is the low electrical hum, then a faint click, as if an old intercom just turned on. A distorted voice whispers, "Attention shoppers," before cutting out. The narrator's breath catches softly. "You might want to keep the lights on for this one," they murmur. Cut to black. The title appears, 7 True Most Unsettling Retail Job Horror Stories You Won't Forget. A single light flickers back to life, and the sound of footsteps begins again. The hum of the lights is different tonight. Kara notices it the moment she walks in. A slightly higher pitch, almost like the building is holding its breath. It's nearly midnight, and the store feels emptier than usual. Her shift doesn't officially start for another 5 minutes, but she likes getting in early. There's something oddly peaceful about a supermarket before closing. No customers, no lines, just endless aisles glowing under tired fluorescent light. Kara tucks a strand of hair behind her ear and clocks in. Devin, her coworker, is already at the front, lazily leaning against his register. "Long night?" he asks, stifling a yawn. She smiles faintly. "Always." She grabs her cart, the squeaky wheel echoing as she pushes it toward aisle 9, the cleaning supplies section. It's her least favorite part of the store. The overhead vent above that aisle always rattles, and there's something about the smell, a mix of bleach and damp cardboard, that makes her uneasy. The aisles are long and straight, stretching like tunnels. As Kara starts restocking shelves, the store's intercom crackles softly overhead, though no one says anything. She glances up, waiting for the usual half-asleep announcement about closing time, but the speaker just hisses, then goes silent. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. A message from Devin, "Manager's going home early. Just us tonight." Kara types back quickly, "Great. If I get murdered by mops, you're to blame." Devin sends a laughing emoji. For a while, the night feels normal. The rhythm of work takes over. Open boxes, scan inventory, line up labels. The sound of the mop machine hums faintly somewhere near the frozen foods. It's monotonous, almost comforting. Then, from the corner of her eye, Kara sees movement. Down at the far end of the aisle, a man is standing. He's facing away from her, dressed in a long dark coat that brushes the floor. She can't see his face, but something about him feels wrong, too still. "Excuse me?" she calls, keeping her tone polite. "We're closing soon." No answer. She pushes the cart slowly forward. The wheel squeaks once, sharply. The man doesn't move. Kara clears her throat, louder this time. "Sir? Can I help you find something?" Still nothing. And then a blink, he's gone. Kara stops mid-step. Her stomach twists. There was no turnoff near him, no door he could have walked through. She peers around the corner. Empty. Only the faint hum of refrigeration and the buzz of lights. She forces herself to laugh softly. "You're tired," she whispers. "You're seeing things." She finishes stocking her section and moves on. But as she turns into aisle 12 a few minutes later, she freezes. The same man is standing halfway down the aisle, motionless, facing her this time. The coat looks older up close. Tattered at the sleeves, the fabric dark with what might be stains. His face is obscured by the shadow of the brim of his hat. Her throat goes dry. "Sir?" she manages. barely above a whisper. He tilts his head slightly, just a fraction, as if acknowledging her. And then the lights flicker. When they steady, he's gone again. Kara's breath quickens. She backs up slowly, heart pounding. Devon's still at the front. She needs to tell him. She half jogs down the aisle, trying to keep calm, but every sound, every squeak of her shoes, feels too loud. When she reaches the register area, Devon is there, scrolling on his phone, earbuds in. "Hey," she says sharply. He looks up, startled. "There's someone in here," she says. "Some guy. I saw him twice." Devon frowns. "I didn't see anyone come in. You sure it's not a reflection or something?" She shakes her head. "No, he was right there. He was—" She stops, realizing how crazy it sounds. Devon glances toward the back. "We'll check the cameras," he says. They walk to the small office behind the service desk. The security monitors hum softly, each one showing a different section of the store in grayscale. Devon scrolls through the feeds. "Which aisle?" "9 first," she says. "Then 12. He rewinds the footage. On the screen, Kara appears, pushing her cart, restocking. And then she turns her head, reacting to something down the aisle. But the screen shows no one there. Devon tilts his head. "See. Wait," she insists. "Check aisle 12. He switches cameras. The footage plays, Kara again pausing, staring straight ahead. Her body stiffens. She looks terrified. But on screen, there's nothing. Just her. Alone. Kara feels the color drain from her face. Devon laughs awkwardly, trying to lighten it. "You need sleep. This job's getting to you." But Kara can't shake the feeling, the weight of eyes watching. The hum of the lights feels heavier now, almost vibrating in her chest. She forces herself back to work, refusing to look down aisle 9 again. Hours drag by. Midnight turns to 2 a.m. Devon finishes mopping and goes out for a smoke. Kara's left alone, folding cardboard in the back room. The radio in the break area plays faintly, an old pop song distorted by static. Then she hears it, the sound of a shopping cart, rolling, slow, metal wheels squeaking. She freezes. "Devon?" she calls. No answer. The cart stops. She peers around the corner and sees the man again, standing perfectly still by the entrance to aisle 9. This time he's closer. She can see the edges of his hands, pale against the dark coat. Her voice trembles. "You're not supposed to be here." He takes one step forward. The sound echoes sharply through the aisle. Then another. Kara backs away. The radio cuts out with a burst of static. The lights flicker again, once, twice, then steady. He's gone. Her chest tightens. She can't breathe. She bolts toward the front. Devon isn't there. His jacket sits on the counter, his cigarette pack next to it. The automatic doors stand closed, reflecting her pale face. The parking lot beyond them is empty. Then, faintly, the intercom clicks. "Clean up on aisle 9. Kara stares up at the speaker. The voice is distorted, deep, static-filled, but unmistakably male. Her pulse spikes. She grabs the phone, dials Devon's number with shaking fingers. It rings once, twice. Then, faintly, she hears the ringtone echoing from somewhere inside the store. She drops the phone. The rain had been falling since dusk, coating the parking lot in a glossy mirror of pale yellow light from the lamps overhead. Miguel tugged the hood of his jacket tighter as he stepped out of his car, locking it with a soft beep that disappeared into the hum of rain. He hated Thursday shifts. Deliveries always came late, and tonight he'd been told to expect a shipment around midnight. That was 2 hours ago. The store loomed in front of him, a squat concrete box sitting alone on the edge of the highway. At night, it didn't feel like a workplace, it felt like a bunker. Miguel pushed through the automatic doors and was greeted by the familiar mix of chill air and that sterile, artificial lemon scent that all big-box stores shared. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. A few aisles still had the restocking signs dangling from their ends. The store's sound system whispered low instrumental music meant to fill the silence, but it only made it worse. He punched in on the clock-in terminal, the screen glowing sickly blue against the dark. "Just me tonight," he muttered. The manager had left hours earlier. It wasn't unusual. Miguel was used to working alone in the back room, stacking boxes, labeling pallets, scanning items until dawn. He walked toward the loading dock, the soles of his boots squeaking faintly on the waxed floor. The rain outside beat steadily against the metal bay doors. A single hanging bulb swung gently above his head, casting a slow-moving shadow. Miguel checked his clipboard. Delivery from Argent Freight, midnight. Status: confirmed. He frowned. No truck, no call, no engine noise. He sighed, pulling out his phone. No messages, no missed calls. The signal bar blinked weakly, one bar then none. He shoved it back into his pocket and sat down on a crate to wait. Minutes dragged by. The sound of rain softened. The only other noise was the quiet ticking of the wall clock above the brake door. Then, faintly from outside, he heard it, the slow crunch of tires on wet asphalt. Miguel stood up quickly. Through the narrow window of the loading door, he could see the hazy outline of a truck idling in the lot, headlights spilling through the rain. Finally, he thought. He grabbed his scanner, flipped the switch for the dock light, and the outside lamps buzzed to life, flooding the loading area with white light. He waited for the sound of doors opening, the thud of crates shifting, but none came. Instead, the truck sat there, engine humming softly. No driver emerged. He hesitated, then walked closer to the window. The cab was dark. The windshield was too fogged to see through, but he could just make out shapes in the trailer's reflection. He knocked on the metal door. "Hey, Argent Freight, right? You're late." No response. He pressed his ear against the cold steel. For a moment he thought he heard something, muffled movement, maybe a voice. Then a low, dragging sound, like chains being pulled slowly across the floor of the truck. He stepped back. What the hell? A loud metallic slam made him jump. It sounded like the truck doors had shut tight, but he hadn't opened them in the first place. He moved toward the control switch for the bay door, his hands slightly shaking now. With a loud rumble, the door rolled upward, letting in a gust of cold, damp air. The parking lot stretched empty before him. The rain still fell, but there was no truck. The entire space outside was deserted. Just the slick reflection of the lamps and the faint sound of wind whistling between the corners of the building. Miguel blinked, disbelief freezing him in place. He'd seen it. He heard it. He felt the vibration of that engine. He closed the bay door again, the mechanism grinding slowly as it came down. The moment it latched, his radio on the counter crackled to life. A voice, distorted by static. "Miguel, open up the dock." He froze. It was faint, hollow, but it said his name. "Hello?" he called out, grabbing the radio. "Who is this? Delivery's late, you're messing with me." No answer. He pressed the button again. "Argent Freight? Come in?" The radio hissed softly. Then, through the static, "We're here." A thud echoed from outside the door, something heavy hitting the pavement. Then another. Miguel backed away. He could feel his pulse in his throat. "Not funny," he muttered, though his voice was trembling. He reached for the light switch, flooding the room with harsh white light. The noise stopped. For a few seconds, the world was still, only the rain tapping on the roof. Miguel tried to steady his breathing, his mind racing to find a rational reason. Maybe another truck passed by. Maybe the wind rattled something loose. He grabbed his clipboard and turned to leave, but as he passed the racks of boxes, something caught his eye. On the floor near the dock door, a set of wet footprints. Bare feet, leading from the door toward the center of the room, then stopping abruptly in front of him. Miguel stepped back instinctively. The floor around him was dry. Only those prints glistened under the light, small puddles forming at the edges. He could see the individual toes. They looked wrong, too long. The radio crackled again. "Miguel, we said open the dock." He dropped it. The next morning, the store opened as usual. Customers came and went, pushing carts, tapping at their phones, oblivious to anything unusual. The rain from last night had washed the parking lot clean, leaving behind a cold shimmer of water that reflected the rising sun. But inside, Under the fluorescent lights, something felt different. The air carried a faint metallic smell, like rust and ozone. Claire, the shift manager, arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. She was a practical woman, early 30s, short hair, crisp uniform. She'd worked here long enough to stop noticing the store's strange hum at night. The way the lights flickered in the far aisles, the odd complaints from night workers about hearing things. Still, when she stepped into the back room that morning and saw the dock door wide open, she frowned. Miguel's car was still outside. His jacket hung on the chair, his ID lanyard resting on the desk. The terminal still showed his login active. Claire sighed. Probably fell asleep in his car again, she muttered, turning off the dock lights. She didn't notice the faint trail of wet footprints that stopped just short of the manager's office. By noon, the store was buzzing. Kids were tugging at cereal boxes. A couple argued over laundry detergent, and the PA system droned with announcements. Price check on aisle 13. Price check, aisle 13. Aisle 13, the seasonal aisle. It always gave Claire a weird feeling. The overhead light there had been flickering for weeks, and maintenance never fixed it. At 12:17 p.m., one of the cashiers, Jenna, radioed her. Claire? There's a customer asking about a return. Something from last night's delivery." Claire frowned. "There wasn't a delivery last night." "That's what I said," Jenna replied. "But she says she got it here. The label says our store number." Claire walked to the front. The customer was an older woman, her gray hair damp as though she'd just come in from the rain, except it hadn't rained all morning. She stood perfectly still, holding a brown cardboard box with no markings except a faint logo burned into one corner. Argent Freight. "Ma'am, what seems to be the issue?" Claire asked, forcing a smile. The woman's voice was soft, almost mechanical. "This was left on my porch. Says it's from here. But I don't want it." Claire hesitated. "Do you know who delivered it?" The woman slowly shook her head. "There was no truck, just noise, like someone dragging something across the road." Claire took the box carefully. It was surprisingly cold, even through her gloves. "All right, ma'am. I'll take care of it." The woman nodded once and walked away without another word. Claire carried the box to the service desk. No label, no barcode. She considered opening it, but something about the faint smell coming from the seams, wet earth and iron, made her stomach twist. She put it in the lost and found cabinet instead. For the rest of the day, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Whenever she passed the surveillance screens in the manager's office, one of the cameras, always the one aimed at aisle 13, glitched, showing static for a split second. At 4 p.m., she sent Jenna to restock that aisle. 10 minutes later, the girl came back pale and shaking. "Claire," she whispered, There's something wrong with the shelves." "What do you mean?" "The prices keep changing." Claire frowned, thinking it was a system error. But when she checked the handheld scanner, it showed the same thing. Each product in aisle 13 had a new price. Not random numbers, either. Just one repeating figure, 13. 13. "Glitch," Claire said, trying to sound confident. She typed into the control tablet, trying to reset the database. The screen froze. The store lights dimmed for half a second. Then the PA system crackled to life. "Price check on aisle 13. Claire froze. The voice wasn't the automated one. It was deep, strained, and familiar. Miguel's voice. Jenna gasped. Did you hear?" Claire didn't let her finish. She grabbed the radio. "Security. Check aisle 13 right now." No response. She walked down the corridor leading to the aisle. The further she went, the quieter everything became. The noise of customers faded, replaced by a low humming sound, like a refrigerator running behind the walls. When she turned into aisle 13, her breath caught. The flickering light above had stopped, but the aisle itself looked wrong. All the shelves were perfectly straight, perfectly aligned, but every product label faced outward with precision too exact to be human. And every single price tag read $13. 13. The air was freezing. At the far end of the aisle, a box sat on the floor, the same Argent Freight logo burned into it. She knelt and touched it. The cardboard was damp, pulsing faintly with cold. Then the store lights flickered again, and for just an instant, she saw someone standing at the opposite end of the aisle, drenched, motionless, their heads slightly tilted. The figure's eyes glowed faintly under the harsh white light. Claire stumbled backward, heart hammering. The lights blinked again, and the figure was gone. She turned and ran toward the front, nearly colliding with the janitor, Tom. The break room had always been a refuge, the one place where the constant beeping of scanners and the faint music from the store radio couldn't reach. It smelled faintly of old coffee, microwave noodles, and lemon disinfectant. For most employees, it was the only quiet space where they could breathe. But lately, even that room felt wrong. After the incident with aisle 13, everyone had been on edge. Corporate sent an email calling it a system malfunction. But no one believed that. The employees whispered in the aisles, glancing over their shoulders, avoiding the far end of the store. Claire hadn't come back since that day. Her locker still hung open, her jacket still inside. And every time someone passed it, the faint sound of dripping could be heard, though no one could find where it came from. That week, the store hired a new night shift stalker, Emily. She was 24, quiet, and desperate for the job. She'd been told about the store's quirks by the others but brushed it off. Every place has ghosts, she laughed. But that first night, she would learn how real those words could be. Her shift started at midnight. She stacked shelves, cleaned up stray carts, and double-checked the end caps. By 2 a.m., the building was utterly silent. Only the hum of the refrigerators kept her company. She decided to take her break early. The break room door creaked as she pushed it open. The lights inside were dimmer than usual, one of the bulbs flickering in a rhythmic pattern. Someone had cleaned up recently. The tables were wiped, the trash emptied. But as she stepped in, something caught her eye on the far wall. A new mirror. It hadn't been there the day before. It was large, rectangular, its frame painted black with faint silver swirls carved into it. It looked expensive, out of place in a cheap retail store break room. The mirror reflected the humming vending machine, the coffee pot, the dull glow of the exit sign, and Emily's own reflection, pale, tired, but curious. She sat down with her sandwich, unwrapping it slowly. The air felt heavier in here, like the room was holding its breath. After a minute, she realized she could hear something beneath the hum of the machines. A faint whispering sound, almost like someone talking behind a wall. She turned off the fan. The sound grew clearer, voices layered and soft. Not from outside the door, from the mirror. Emily stood, stepping closer. Her reflection stared back at her, but the light in her eyes seemed a shade darker. She leaned in, heart pounding. The whispering stopped. Then, faintly, the reflection smiled. Emily gasped and stumbled back, her chair scraping loudly against the tile. The sound echoed too long, like it had bounced off invisible walls. She blinked hard, staring at the mirror again. Her reflection now stood exactly as she did, scared, frozen. She told herself it was a trick of the light, the fatigue. Maybe her eyes were playing games with her. She sat down again, forcing herself to eat, not looking up. But every few seconds, she could feel the mirror watching her. By the time her break ended, she had convinced herself it was nothing. She left the room quickly, shutting the door behind her. But when the morning shift arrived, the mirror was gone. No one mentioned moving it. The wall was bare, not even a nail hole left behind. The next night, Emily came in early and asked the assistant manager, Darren, about it. He looked confused. What mirror? The one in the break room, she said. Big, black frame, silver swirls. Darren frowned. We don't have any mirrors in there. Never have. Emily felt a chill run through her spine. I saw it. It was there last night. Darren shrugged. You probably meant the one in the back hall. There's an old convex mirror for the stockroom. But she shook her head. No, this one was different. It was new. That night, she avoided the break room. She ate her sandwich in the stock aisle instead, beneath the steady buzz of the overhead lights. Felt safer that way. But around 3 a.m., she needed to use the sink to wash her hands. Against her better judgment, she walked back to the break room. The hallway leading to it was darker than usual. The motion lights didn't come on right away. She could see her reflection faintly in the small window of the break room door. But there was something behind her. A shadowy blur, too tall to be her own. She froze, heart hammering, then forced herself to open the door. The mirror was back, exactly where it had been before. Her reflection looked drained, her face paler than she felt. But behind her reflection, in the mirror's world, the room looked slightly different. The vending machine was darker, the coffee pot gone. The table had deep scratches across it, as though clawed by something with long fingers. Emily stared, transfixed. Then her reflection moved, a split second before she did. It tilted its head slightly to the left, eyes locked onto hers. "Stop!" she whispered. "Stop it!" The reflection smiled again, wider this time. A faint tapping began. 1, 2, 3. The sound came from the other side of the glass, like fingernails on a window pane. Emily stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The tapping stopped. She turned and ran, the sound of her own footsteps mixing with something else. Something just a fraction behind her. She didn't stop until she reached the main floor, where the automatic doors gleamed faintly under the exit lights. Her breath came in sharp gasps. When she finally dared to look behind her, the hallway was empty. The next morning, when she tried to explain what happened, the manager cut her off. "You're overtired," he said. "You're seeing things. We've all been stressed." But that evening, as the staff gathered before their shift, someone noticed something strange on the break room table. A dark stain shaped like a handprint. It wasn't ink or paint. It looked like it had seeped through the surface of the table itself. That night, Emily refused to go in alone. She asked 2 co-workers to come with her, laughing nervously to make it sound like a joke. "Maybe we'll see the ghost of Claire," she said. They entered together. The lights flickered. The air felt colder. And once again the mirror was there. But this time all 3 of them saw it. "Where did this come from?" one whispered. No one answered. The reflection of the room in the mirror was subtly wrong again. The clock read a different time, and the vending machine's lights blinked in reverse. Then one of the co-workers gasped. "There's someone standing behind us." They turned around, nothing. But in the reflection, a tall, dark figure stood between them, its outline hazy, its head tilted, the same faint smile stretching across a face they couldn't fully see. The lights went out. When they came back on, the mirror was cracked, a single jagged line running down its center. The figure was gone. The next morning, the mirror had vanished again. Management blamed vandalism. But in the weeks that followed, employees began reporting strange reflections. Glimpses of faces in the freezer doors, shapes moving behind them in polished metal, shadows standing still when they moved. One night, a janitor cleaning the break room found something lodged behind the vending machine. A shard of glass with silver edges. When he picked it up, he swore he saw his own reflection blink twice, though his eyes hadn't moved. He dropped the shard and left without finishing his shift. Now, whenever new employees join the night crew, the old ones warn them, "Don't eat in the break room alone. If you see a mirror in there, don't look too long. And whatever you do, don't smile back. Because sometimes, reflections remember things we try to forget." And in that store, the mirror is still waiting for someone curious enough to meet its gaze. The walk-in freezer was the coldest part of the store, a white metal tomb filled with the scent of frost and plastic wrap. Most employees avoided it unless they had to restock the frozen goods. The hum of the compressor was constant, a low mechanical heartbeat that made it impossible to tell if something else was moving in there with you. Darren, the assistant manager, hated that freezer more than anyone. It wasn't just the cold. It was the sound. Every time he entered, there was this faint echo, like footsteps. Not his own, but one beat off like something pacing him just behind the shelves. He told himself it was just the air pressure or the way sound bounced in the confined space. Still, he never stayed longer than necessary. That night, the temperature alarm went off at 2:47 a.m. The digital display outside the freezer blinked red. -22 degrees Fahrenheit. -10 degrees Fahrenheit. Someone had left the door slightly open. Darren sighed, rubbing his eyes. The night shift was short-staffed since Claire's disappearance, and he was pulling double duty. He grabbed his gloves and flashlight. As soon as he pushed the heavy door open, a gust of freezing air spilled out, fogging his glasses. The light flickered inside, illuminating rows of boxes stacked to the ceiling. He stepped in, the door closing behind him with a deep metallic thud. The world outside vanished instantly. No hum from the store, no sound at all, just silence and the rhythmic buzz of the freezer motor. He tightened his jacket and walked toward the back. The temperature gauge on the wall blinked erratically, the numbers flickering between -12 and -15. Frost had formed along the metal racks, glinting like glass in his flashlight beam. His breath came out in white puffs, visible in the cold. He found the culprit, a broken seal on the back vent, covered with ice. He bent down to inspect it, his flashlight flickering as he worked. That's when he heard it. A slow scraping sound behind the shelves. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, deliberate. Metal dragging against metal. Darren froze, listening. The sound stopped. He stood up, sweeping his light across the rows. Nothing. Just the pale boxes and the fog of his own breath. Probably just ice shifting, he muttered. But when he turned back toward the door, his stomach dropped. There was a trail of frost prints leading toward the center of the freezer. Bare footprints. Human. They were too detailed to be old. Each toe, each arch pressed perfectly into the frost. And they led straight behind the tall stack of frozen meat boxes. He stepped forward slowly, his boots crunching the icy floor. "Who's in here?" His voice echoed off the metal. No answer. He rounded the corner and froze. The back wall was covered in frost, thick and white. But there, in the center, someone had drawn something into it. Long lines, circles, and what looked like symbols scraped with fingernails. It wasn't random. It almost looked like writing. He leaned closer. The ice hissed softly, like it was breathing. His flashlight flickered again. Then the sound came back. A dragging, slow and rhythmic, like something heavy moving just out of sight. "Who's there?" he called, louder now. A faint voice echoed back. His own voice. "Who's there?" He spun around. Nothing. The temperature gauge beeped rapidly, the numbers dropping fast now. -18 degrees F, -21 degrees F, -25 degrees Fahrenheit. His flashlight dimmed again, the beam thinning. The frost on the racks seemed to thicken, creeping up the metal surfaces as though growing. His breath came faster, shallow, clouding the air. Then, in the farthest corner of the freezer, something shifted. The outline of a person, or what looked like one, was pressed against the translucent layer of frost coating the wall. The shape was faint, but visible. Head, shoulders, hands splayed wide as if someone were trapped inside the ice. Darren's breath hitched. He stepped closer, heart pounding. The figure's face was turned slightly, blurred under the frozen layer, its mouth open. He blinked, and the eyes moved. They rolled slowly toward him. Darren stumbled backward, crashing into a stack of boxes. One toppled over, spilling sealed packages onto the floor. He scrambled to his feet, but the freezer door had sealed shut behind him. He grabbed the handle, yanking hard. It didn't move. "Come on!" he shouted, pulling until his hands burned. Behind him, the ice cracked. A sound like glass splintering filled the air. He turned in time to see the frost-covered wall ripple outward, as though something inside was pushing to get out. The compressor screamed, the lights flickered violently, and a plume of freezing mist poured across the floor. He could barely see now. The mist thickened until his flashlight beam was just a faint blur. Then, a figure moved within it, tall, human-shaped, but impossibly pale. Its skin glistened like frost, and its eyes were completely white. Darren backed away, but his boots slipped on the icy floor. The thing stepped closer, its movements slow and deliberate, like it was learning how to move. Its mouth opened. A hollow sound, like wind rushing through a pipe, filled the air. He tried to scream, but the cold stole his breath. The figure leaned close, and for just a second he saw its face clearly, frozen, cracked, and identical to his own. Then everything went black. When the morning crew arrived, they found the freezer door open, frost creeping across the threshold. Darren's flashlight was on the floor, still blinking weakly. His jacket lay beside it, stiff with ice. But Darren himself was gone. The temperature inside the freezer had dropped to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. The thermometer's glass had shattered. Maintenance sealed it off, citing a mechanical failure. But the employees knew better. They whispered about it in the break room. How sometimes, when they walked past the freezer at night, they could see a faint handprint appear on the inside of the glass window, only to fade moments later. A few weeks later, the night stalkers noticed something strange. When they opened the new shipment of frozen goods, some boxes had ice patterns inside. Shapes that looked like faces pressed against the plastic, mouths open in silent screams. Management said it was condensation, but no one volunteered to restock the freezer anymore. And every few nights, when the store goes quiet and the compressor kicks on, the speakers in the stockroom emit a faint whisper. A voice, slow and distant, repeating the same words over and over. Too cold. Let me out. The air grows colder. Frost creeps along the metal shelves. And if you look closely at the freezer window as you walk by, you might see a reflection. Not your own, but someone standing just behind you. Eyes white as snow, mouth moving soundlessly as the temperature drops. By morning, the glass clears. The air warms. Everything looks normal again. But deep inside the walls of the freezer, the frost patterns remain, shifting slightly, like something still breathing underneath. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the compressor's hum echoing in time with something else, a heartbeat that doesn't belong to any machine. The overnight restock was supposed to be routine. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, the store received its largest shipment of the week. Dozens of pallets loaded with everything from canned soup to batteries. The crew hated those nights. The sheer weight of exhaustion pressed down harder than the boxes themselves. But that Tuesday was different. The air outside was thick with fog, and the delivery truck arrived 2 hours late, its headlights cutting through the mist like twin blades. Miguel's replacement, a young man named Ryan, took the lead that night. He was new, only 3 weeks into the job, and still carried that restless energy of someone who hadn't learned yet to fear the store's silence. To him, this was just another shift, another long night in a half-lit building filled with dust and echoes. By 1:30 a.m., the pallets were inside, stacked neatly in the back corridor. The others took their breaks, but Ryan stayed behind, humming to himself as he cut open boxes with a utility knife. His earbuds hung loose around his neck, one dangling, softly leaking an old pop song. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, just once, and then steadied. He didn't notice the sound at first. A faint clinking like chains shifting on concrete. It came from the far end of the back hallway, beyond the receiving bay. He assumed it was the sound of a loose door chain or a rattling pipe. He went back to work. But the sound came again, this time closer. He looked up, frowning. Hello? No answer. He turned down the narrow corridor leading to the storeroom, flashlight in hand. The beam cut across metal racks and stacks of unopened boxes. The smell of cardboard and damp air hung heavy. He noticed one door slightly ajar, the door to the electrical room. Darren? He called, though he already knew Darren was gone. The chain sound stopped. He stepped closer, pushed the door open wider. Inside, the room was pitch black, the only light coming from the red LED indicators on the breaker panels. His flashlight swept across the walls, catching movement. Just a flicker, a shape ducking out of sight behind a panel. Hey! He shouted, heart rate climbing. He moved in further, boots crunching on the concrete floor. The air in here was cold, unnaturally cold, like the freezer's breath had leaked into the pipes. Something dripped from the ceiling. A dark drop landed on his shoulder. He wiped it, not water. Sticky, red-brown under the light. He looked up. For just a moment, he saw it. A figure crouched in the corner near the ceiling, pressed against the pipes. Its limbs were long, too long, and its skin was the color of wet ash. It had no eyes, but a slit of a mouth that stretched unnaturally wide. Ryan stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. The beam spun across the floor, lighting the figure for only half a second before it vanished, leaving nothing but empty shadows. He scrambled out of the room, slammed the door, and pressed his back against it, gasping for breath. Jesus! Jesus Christ! He radioed for help. Static answered. He tried again. The channel was filled with a faint whispering sound, like someone breathing directly into the speaker. He dropped the radio and ran toward the loading bay, his footsteps echoing too loudly. The hallway stretched longer than he remembered, impossibly long. The hum of the lights distorted into a low drone, vibrating through his chest. Halfway down, he passed a mirror mounted high on the wall for safety, the kind that lets you see around corners. But when he glanced into it, he froze. In the mirror, the hallway behind him wasn't empty. Something crawled along the floor, limbs bending in impossible directions, its movements jerky but fast. Its head tilted upward, and though it had no eyes, it turned directly toward him. Ryan bolted. The lights above him popped one by one, plunging the corridor into flashes of white and darkness. He reached the end, slammed into the loading bay door, and turned the handle locked. Come on! Come on! Come on! The chain sound returned, this time directly behind him. He turned. The thing was standing now. It towered at least 7 feet tall, its skin slick and pale, veins visible under the light. Its head tilted as though studying him, and its mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp, irregular teeth. Not animal, not human. Took one slow step forward. Ryan grabbed the crowbar from the floor and swung wildly, hitting nothing but air. The creature moved fast, faster than his eyes could track, and suddenly it was beside him, whispering something he couldn't understand. The words weren't words at all, more like the sound of wind rushing through a hollow pipe. He swung again, the crowbar connected this time, hitting solid flesh with a sickening thud. The thing screamed, a high, piercing sound that made his vision blur. He dropped the bar, clamped his hands over his ears. The lights overhead burst in a shower of sparks. And then silence. When he looked up again, it was gone. The door behind him creaked. Slowly, painfully, it opened on its own. The fog from outside drifted in, curling along the floor like smoke. Ryan didn't wait. He ran. He made it halfway across the parking lot before he realized his phone was gone. His truck keys too. He turned back, staring at the building. Every light inside was flickering in unison, like a pulse. He stood there, trembling, listening to the hum that seemed to come from deep within the walls. A low, rhythmic sound that almost matched a heartbeat. Then, faintly, over the intercom speaker mounted above the bay doors, came a voice. Attention staff. Restock complete. All items accounted for. Ryan froze. That wasn't a recording. It was his own voice. He backed away slowly, hands shaking, until the fog swallowed the building whole. The next morning, the truck driver returned to find the doors still locked from the inside. Ryan's jacket lay crumpled by the loading bay. The surveillance footage showed him entering the hallway, and then nothing. Every camera after that moment glitched into static. When the footage was slowed down, frame by frame, one image appeared between the static flashes, just one. A tall, pale figure standing behind Ryan, head tilted, mouth open. The store closed for 24 hours for pest fumigation. But the employees knew. They always know. Now, on quiet nights, when the fog rolls in, drivers passing by swear they see someone standing in the loading bay window, a tall shadow moving from side to side. Sometimes they hear the intercom crackle to life, repeating the same line in that flat, tired tone. Restock complete. All items accounted for. And if you listen closely, beneath the hum of the building, you can hear the faint clink of chains, like something pacing in the dark, waiting for the next delivery. No one works alone in the back anymore. The hallways are too long, the air too still, and the mirrors too honest. Because somewhere inside those walls, that thing still lingers, watching, learning, mimicking the voices of those it took. And every few months, when the shipments arrive late and the fog rolls over the parking lot, the lights flicker just once, as if something inside the store is waking up, ready to count the new arrivals. It started like any other late shift, quiet, empty, the air heavy with that strange sterile smell that only large stores have at night. The automatic doors whispered open and closed for no one. The security cameras watched without blinking, and the fluorescent lights hummed faintly, like an insect trapped inside a glass jar. Erin had been working at this department store for almost a year. She liked the silence of the late-night shift. No kids running down aisles, no endless customer complaints. Just her, the shelves, and the soft drone of the building around her. That night, she was assigned to tidy up the home decor section. Candles, lamps, mirrors, the quietest corner of the store. At around 10:47 p.m., she noticed him. An older man, tall, wearing a brown coat that looked too heavy for the mild weather. His gray hair was slicked back, his face thin but calm. He pushed a cart slowly down the aisle, the wheels squeaking faintly with every turn. Erin called out, "Sir, just letting you know we close in 10 minutes. He didn't answer. She assumed he hadn't heard her, so she approached a bit closer. "Sir, we're closing soon." This time he stopped, but he didn't turn around. He just stood there, facing the shelf of mirrors. Erin hesitated. "Sir." Then, without moving his head, he said softly, "I'm just looking." Something about his voice felt wrong, like it came from far away, through a tunnel. "All right," she said, forcing a polite smile. "Just letting you know." She backed away and went to the next aisle. But when she reached the end and glanced around the corner, he was still there, staring at the mirrors. At closing time, the manager, Brenda, locked the main doors and did a walkthrough to make sure no one was left inside. Erin told her about the old man. Brenda checked the mirror section empty. "Probably left while you weren't looking," she said, shrugging. But when they turned off the lights and left, Erin swore she saw something move in the reflection of one of the mirrors. Just a flicker of a dark coat. The next night it happened again. Around the same time, 10:47, Erin saw the man again. Same brown coat, same calm, distant movements. This time he wasn't alone. There was another reflection in the mirror beside him, a few feet away, where no one stood. A shape, faint, blurred, like smoke pressed against glass. Erin froze. "Sir, can I help you with something?" He didn't respond. Slowly, he lifted his hand and touched the mirror's surface. She stepped back. "Sir, please don't touch." The lights above them flickered once, and in that split second of darkness, she heard a whisper. Not words, just the breath of one. When the light steadied again, he was gone. The aisle was empty. The next morning, Brenda called her into the office. "You okay?" she asked. "You look pale." Erin nodded but didn't speak. Brenda turned the computer monitor toward her, the security footage from the night before. There she was, on screen, walking down the aisle, speaking to someone. But in the camera's view, there was no one there. Just her, alone, talking to empty space. Brenda chuckled awkwardly, trying to brush it off. "Maybe you were just tired, hon. Those late shifts mess with your head." Erin laughed along weakly, but deep down, she knew what she saw. That night, she brought her phone and started recording while she worked. Around 10:40, the store grew colder. Her breath fogged faintly under the lights. She felt the prickle of goosebumps crawl up her arms. Then came the faint squeak, the sound of cart wheels. She turned her camera toward the home decor aisle. The wheels turned the corner, empty. No one pushing them. They rolled to a slow stop in front of the mirrors. Erin whispered to herself, "Please don't." The mirrors vibrated, just slightly, like something was moving behind the glass. She took one step forward, the reflection in the nearest mirror shifted. It wasn't her reflection. It was him. The old man, smiling faintly, eyes dark as ink. Her phone trembled in her hand as she whispered, "Who are you?" The reflection's lips moved, but no sound came out. Then her phone screen glitched, filled with static for a second, and the reflection was suddenly right beside her in the video feed. Aaron screamed and dropped the phone. When she looked up, the aisle was empty again. The next morning, she tried to show the video to Brenda, but the file was corrupted. The thumbnail showed only a still frame, a blurry image of her own reflection, standing beside another figure, too tall and featureless to make out. Aaron wanted to quit, but something made her stay, curiosity maybe, or fear of what might happen if she didn't come back. By the fourth night, she was unraveling. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her reflection blinking after she had already opened her eyes. She began covering the mirrors in her apartment. At work, the others started noticing strange things too. The faint sound of footsteps when no one was there, cold spots in the aisles, and once, the feeling of someone standing directly behind them when they looked into the mirror section. One coworker, Jamie, laughed it off, until she caught sight of something behind her reflection. "Just a trick of the light," she said nervously. But when she turned around, the shelves were bare. That same night, Aaron found something in the mirror aisle that made her blood run cold. A brown coat, folded neatly on the floor, dusty as if it had been there for years. Beside it, written faintly on the glass in condensation, were 5 words, "I never left this place." She backed away slowly, trembling. The mirrors around her began to darken, like frost spreading across the surface. Her reflection flickered, then vanished completely. For one horrifying moment, there was nothing staring back at her from the glass. And then, something else did. Her reflection returned, but the eyes were wrong, black and endless. Its lips curled upward in a slow, unnatural grin. She screamed, but no sound came out. The next morning, the store opened as usual. Brenda called Aaron's phone. No answer. They found her car still in the parking lot, keys on the dashboard. The mirror section was spotless. Every mirror gleamed, too clean. Security footage showed Aaron entering the aisle at 10:47 p.m. And then she was gone. Her reflection, however, remained on the glass for 3 full minutes after she disappeared, standing still, smiling. Now, employees say the old man still comes back. Sometimes alone, sometimes with someone walking beside him. A young woman with dark hair, her movements stiff and mirrored. And if you walk past the mirror aisle late at night, you might see your own reflection blink out of sync, just once. A small, subtle mistake. The security office was the one place in the store that never felt alive. It was small, square, and windowless, lit only by the pale glow of 12 monitors stacked in rows on the wall. The hum of the servers was constant, a mechanical heartbeat that never stopped. To most employees, it was a place of boredom. But for Daniel, the night security guard, it was a place of comfort. The cameras showed him everything, every corner of the store. Nothing could surprise him, until that night. It was a little after 2 a.m. when Daniel leaned back in his chair, sipping from a lukewarm cup of coffee. The store was empty, at least it should have been. The aisles were still, every register off, the parking lot lights flickering lazily in the fog. He rubbed his eyes, fighting off fatigue. Then one of the monitors blinked. Camera 12, the mirror aisle. The feed glitched for half a second, static crawling across the screen. Daniel sighed, reached for the keyboard, and tapped the reset command. The screen cleared and then froze again. Except this time there was movement. A figure stood in the aisle, motionless, facing the mirrors. He frowned, leaned closer. The timestamp in the corner showed real time. 2:03 a.m. He picked up the radio. Brenda? You still in the building?" No response. The channel crackled faintly with static, then silence. He turned back to the screen. The figure hadn't moved. Tall, slender, maybe wearing a coat. The angle wasn't great, but something about the shape was off. Too long in the limbs, too narrow at the shoulders. Daniel switched to camera 13, which caught the aisle from the other end. Empty. He switched back to camera 12. The figure was gone. He blinked, confused. Checked the timestamp again, still live. "Okay," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. He rewound 10 seconds. The playback showed the figure standing still. Then the feed glitched, just a single frame skipped, and it vanished. No exit. No movement. Just gone. He stared at the screen for a long time, his chest tightening. Then, just as he reached to switch to another camera, something else appeared in the corner of the monitor. A faint reflection. A face. It wasn't looking into the camera. It was looking out. Daniel froze. The reflection pressed closer, until the glass lens fogged slightly, as if it were breathing against it. Then the screen went black. All 12 monitors flickered once, then showed static. "Come on," he muttered, standing. He tapped the equipment, checked the cords. Everything was still connected. Then the lights in the room dimmed for a second, and when they came back, every monitor showed the same image. The mirror aisle. But now there were multiple figures. Dozens of them, all standing perfectly still, facing the mirrors. Their reflections, however, weren't matching. Some were smiling, some were turned slightly to the side. Others appeared to be whispering. Daniel's mouth went dry. His hand hovered over the radio again, but his fingers shook. This has to be playback," he whispered. "This can't be live." He checked the timestamp. 2:09 a.m. Live feed. Then one by one, the figures began to turn. All of them, their heads moving slowly toward the camera, until every reflection was facing him directly. He stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The air in the room grew colder, like a freezer door had opened. He could see his breath fogging faintly. The speakers from the security console began to hum. A low static noise that slowly formed into a voice. At first, it was indistinct. Then words emerged, layered, distorted, like several voices speaking at once. "Are you watching us, Daniel?" He froze. His own name. The monitors flickered again. Now one camera showed the break room, another the employee entrance, another the loading bay. In each, a faint figure stood in the background, half seen, pale, motionless. Daniel tried to turn off the system, but the controls were dead. He yanked the power cord. The screens stayed on. And then one of the cameras, camera 7, switched to show the security office itself. Daniel's stomach dropped. He was on the screen, standing exactly where he was, staring at the monitors. But in the footage, he wasn't alone. Behind him, a shape began to form. Tall, blurred, its outline flickering in and out like bad reception. He spun around. The room was empty. When he looked back at the screen, the figure was closer. Right behind him now. Its head tilted to one side, its mouth opened slightly, revealing a dark hollow where teeth should have been. The voice from the speakers whispered again, softer this time. "We see what you see." Daniel lunged for the door, slamming it open. The hallway beyond was dark. Too dark. The overhead lights were off, though he could still hear the faint buzz of electricity. He ran toward the main exit, heart pounding. Behind him, the hum grew louder, like the monitors were alive, feeding off his fear. He turned the corner and stopped dead. The hallway ahead was lined with mirrors. Not real ones. Store displays leaned against the walls, waiting to be shelved. But in the faint light, their reflections all shimmered faintly. In each reflection, Daniel wasn't alone. A figure stood behind him in every one, its hand reaching forward. He bolted for the exit, threw open the main door, and stumbled into the fog outside. He didn't look back until he reached his car. When he finally turned, the store's lights were flickering wildly inside, like a storm of white light trapped behind the glass. The next morning, the opening manager found the security room door wide open. Daniel's chair was still spinning slightly. His coffee cup was on the floor, shattered. Every monitor showed the same image. A still frame of Daniel standing in front of the screens, his expression blank. Behind him, the tall, pale shape had one hand resting on his shoulder. The footage was later archived, labeled corrupted. The timestamp froze at 2:11 a.m. and never moved again. Now, new guards refused to sit alone in the security room. They claim sometimes, even with the cameras off, the screens faintly glow. And if you stay long enough, the static begins to whisper. Not words at first, but breathing. Then, a faint voice through the speakers asks the same question, night after night, in the same flat tone. "Are you watching us, Daniel?" And sometimes, when they turn to look at the reflection in the glass of the screen, they swear they see someone standing right behind them, smiling. It was just after closing when the phone rang. The sound was jarring in the silence, sharp, echoing through the empty aisles like a siren that didn't belong there. The store had been closed for over an hour, and every light except those near the entrance had already been dimmed. Brenda, the night manager, hesitated before answering. "Customer service, this is Brenda speaking." For a moment, there was nothing, just a faint hiss of static. Then a voice came through, calm, polite, almost too normal. "Hi, I'd like to make a complaint." Brenda blinked, confused. "Sir, the store is closed. You'll have to—" "I was just there." The voice interrupted, still calm, still steady. "And one of your employees was very rude to me." Brenda glanced around the office. The security monitors were off. The register screens glowed faintly in standby mode. "Who was it, sir?" The voice paused. "Her name was Erin." Brenda froze. Her mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" The voice repeated, slower this time. "Erin. She was working in home decor. She said she couldn't help me. She told me to leave." Brenda's hands began to shake. Erin had been missing for 3 days. "Sir," she managed. "When exactly were you in the store?" "Just now," the voice said pleasantly. "She's still here." Brenda's pulse quickened. "Sir, are you sure this isn't some kind of—" The voice cut her off again. "You should really train your staff better. She didn't even look at me when I spoke to her. Just stared into the mirror." Brenda's skin crawled. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "What mirror?" "The one she came out of." A cold rush of air moved through the room. The lights flickered. Brenda slammed the phone down, heart pounding. She told herself it was a prank. It had to be. Someone was playing a cruel joke. But the curiosity wouldn't let go. She unlocked the office door and stepped into the empty store. The silence was oppressive. Her shoes squeaked softly on the polished floor as she moved past the checkout lanes. The air felt heavy, thick, like breathing underwater. She made her way toward the home decor section, every instinct screaming for her to turn back. But she couldn't. When she reached the mirror aisle, the lights above flickered to life, one by one, down the row. At the far end, someone was standing there. A woman, dark hair still facing the glass. Brenda's voice trembled. "Erin?" No response. "Erin, is that you?" The figure turned slightly, not all the way, just enough for Brenda to see her profile. It was Erin. Same uniform, same name tag. But her eyes were wrong. Too dark, too hollow. Brenda took a cautious step forward. "We've been looking for you. Are you—" Erin's head tilted in that same slow, unnatural motion the others had described before. Her lips parted, and a whisper came out. Faint, warped, like an echo from a deep well. "Customers always come back." The mirrors around her began to tremble, their reflections rippling like water. Brenda stumbled back, gasping. One of the mirrors cracked, then another. The sound spread through the aisle like ice fracturing on a frozen lake. She turned and ran. But the store had changed. The aisles no longer lined up. They twisted, intersected, doubled back. Every turn led her deeper into the maze. The overhead intercom crackled to life. A distorted version of her own voice echoed through the speakers. "Attention customers. We value your feedback." She covered her ears, trembling. "Stop this." The voice laughed, her laugh, then whispered, "You're doing great, Brenda. Just one more complaint to process." The air grew colder. Frost began to form along the shelves. The lights above dimmed to a sickly orange glow. Brenda turned a corner and froze. The customer was waiting for her. He stood at the end of the aisle, tall, wrapped in a brown coat. His face was calm, expressionless. But his eyes, or what should have been eyes, were black, empty holes. "Sir," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "You never resolved my complaint." I don't understand." "She didn't help me," he said, voice low, flat. "So now I'm asking you, Brenda backed away, shaking her head. Please, I don't. The mirrors on both sides of the aisle began to reflect her, over and over, infinite versions of herself. Each one a little different. Some crying, some expressionless, some smiling. In every reflection, the man in the brown coat stood closer. Sir, please, she whispered. He tilted his head. You should have listened. The mirrors shattered all at once. 1,000 shards fell like rain, slicing through the silence. The air went dark. When the morning crew arrived, the store lights were on, the phone still off the hook in the office. The aisles looked normal, almost too normal. Everything was perfectly aligned, every mirror spotless. Brenda's car sat in the parking lot, keys in the ignition. Her clipboard was found near Register 3. Her handwriting ended mid-sentence. On the security footage, the last thing seen was her walking into the mirror aisle at 2:27 a.m. The next frame was static. When the feed cleared, a new figure stood where she had been. A woman with dark hair, a faint smile and hollow eyes. Later that week, the store received a voicemail. The message was short, quiet, and unbearably calm. Hi, I'd like to make a complaint. Click. End of message. Now, employees say the phone sometimes rings after closing. They don't answer it anymore. But those who've stayed long enough claim the ringing never stops until someone picks up. And if you do answer, the voice on the other end will thank you politely before saying your name. Because once the store knows who you are, you never really leave.